Okay, this is a good start. Here's the thing, Elf. I've seen Guts from Berserk kill a demonic sea god. The Doomslayer kill the Icon of Sin more than once. Then we've got the Primarch Vulcan beating the ever-loving shit out of his demonic brother Magnus with a Home Depot's worth of hammers. Spawn went to hell, killed Malbolgia. Dante killed Mundus, and I've seen others kill other powerful demons. So, either better kill somebody really big, or show me you got some style. What do you got?
Aura, kill yourself.
How could I ever?
Okay, that's a really good one. Despite resisting it for a while now, here I am, finally reviewing Frieren. Outside of Gundam, this might be the most requested anime for me to review, and I often found myself telling the same story as to why I wasn't watching it. I just don't have any interest in Japanese fantasy stories as of right now. Ever since the isekai takeover of anime and manga, the medium very rarely has any shows that I want to watch from season to season. I made a joke on Twitter about how easy it was to predict the name of an anime that would be coming out. Everything feels predictable, and almost all of it sucks. I imagine some people are going to tell me that I need to watch this series or I need to watch that series, but if it's a fantasy story that is about the main hero being surrounded by giant-breasted women on a quest to kill the Demon King, I kind of want the lead character to neck himself instead. That would be more interesting. Not to mention, none of these series have even come close to touching Berserk or some of the other Japanese fantasies that I enjoy from yesteryear, so why watch anything else, really, that doesn't have anything to offer? The reason I know this is I've tried out a few of these series, and none of them have come even close to the intensity and storytelling of Kentaro Miura's masterpiece. None of them really do anything interesting either. Even though I was interested in Goblin Slayer at the start, it just ended up feeling like your mom going to Walmart and getting Mountain Lightning instead of Mountain Dew. It just felt like knockoff Berserk. No matter how hard it tries, it just couldn't touch the real stuff. But we're doing a review of Frieren, and the title of it is what it is, so we might as well get into it, and I'll give you my opinions of whether I think it's good and why. But first, we need to talk about me being kind of racist.
Alright, listen to me, you knife-eared piece of shit!
So where does Frieren come into play? Why did I decide to review it after so many people recommended it to me and I shot them down?
Money!
Yeah, I took a bribe. I'm a whore, I know. At the same time, I feel the need to explain exactly why it is that I was so resistant to reviewing this in the first place. There's actually two reasons as to why I was refusing to watch the series. The first has to do with the fantasy genre, the second has to do with the protagonist. Like I mentioned early on in the video, I honestly think that Japanese fantasy stories suck. The two that I tried, and got pretty far into the series on, instead of dropping it after the first few episodes like something like ReZero, was Rising of the Shield Hero and Goblin Slayer. I already talked about why I dropped Goblin Slayer while I was reading the manga, but with Shield Hero, I ended up dropping it because even though I thought it had an interesting opening premise, as time went on, it just became another generic isekai. As it stands, I honestly feel like the fantasy genre is the most overdone in Eastern fiction right now. Whether it's an isekai or just a standard fantasy story, everything feels incredibly derivative. It's always about getting the party to go fight the Demon King. Even when you try to change the formula a little bit, or maybe try to turn it into a comedy in the case of Konosuba, it's almost always about just, again, getting the party together to fight the Demon King, and it's boring. I get a lot more out of rereading Berserk. Now, in the interest of fairness, one manga that I started on that I feel is different was called Centuria. It was made by somebody who used to work with the guy who created Chainsaw Man, and I honestly need to read more of it, but it feels different because it's dark fantasy first and foremost, and second, it takes obvious inspirations from Berserk, but also Lovecraftian elements. Once I finish it, I'll probably review it. Same with a few other Japanese fantasies that I enjoy quite a bit, but I just didn't finish. I was like maybe halfway through them or something. Something like Aura Battle or Dunbine. I think that's the peak of isekai. And then on top of that, from what I've seen of Escaflowne and Record of Lodoss War, those are pretty great too. Also, if you recommend solo leveling to me, shut up. No, I will not. I think the best way to sum up my feelings about the way that Japan is doing fantasy these days is just by saying that it's become slop. It's been dumbed down so much that it feels like there really isn't much that's going on that pushes the envelope or tries to be that bold with its ideas. It feels like each of these series that I hear about, Whether it's a new isekai or just a generic fantasy, it's effectively a new fast food restaurant being opened. Some are better than others, and Lord knows, on occasion I would kill for a beef and cheddar from Arby's, but all of it pales in comparison to the highs of the genre. Nobody would ever want to eat a steak from McDonald's, so Lord knows I'm certainly not going to want to watch a fantasy show called At One Point I Was a Farmer, but now I'm going to murder the Demon Lord with this big titty waifu or some bullshit. Regardless, though, you can kind of see why I would be resistant to watch anything where a bunch of heroes must go forth and kill the Demon King, or do anything related to that. Whenever I looked at the description of Frieren online, I would see that and then just throw up a little in my mouth. Now, the second reason that I refuse to watch Frieren is a lot more petty. Allow me to replay a clip from a previous video of mine. Especially, I don't care about an anime where the lead character is some fucking knife eater. I'm a Space Marine fan, folks. The only passing interest that I ever have about elves begins and ends at muzzle velocity. Yeah, I hate elves. The reason I hate elves in fantasy settings is because they're almost always a bunch of hoity-toity jerk-offs. It gets really old. For some strange reason, the default with any sort of elves is always going to be that you'll never understand our mysterious elven ways, shut the fuck up. It's BS, and it makes it honestly seem like the writers just ran out of ideas. To give you an idea of how little I hold elves in any regard, I have beaten Baldur's Gate 3 at least 3 times. 2 out of the 3 times, I killed Asterion because I didn't need him, and because he was annoying me, because he's a fucking elf. Shadowheart's pretty great, though, but she's only half-elf. It's like clockwork, too. From the film version of The Lord of the Rings to Warhammer Fantasy to Warhammer 40k, and just about every other fantasy world, the elves are almost always profoundly annoying. And I don't want to hear how this supposedly makes me racist. Elves are almost always the most racist faction in any fantasy story. I'm on the receiving end and I don't like it. In Warhammer 40k, for fuck's sake, they call humans monkeys. I don't want to hear the gripes here. So let's add all this together. We have a story that's being pitched that takes place after the heroes kill the Demon King, and the lead character's an elf. Oh, goody joy, what a wonderful day for me. With all that said, though, when I started watching Frieren, I found something that I honestly wasn't expecting. Absolutely nothing was what it seemed, and I think that's why I'm stuck on it. That leads us to the next section.
I must admit that was much nicer than I expected.
When it comes to the technical elements of this particular anime, it was written by a nobody and drawn by a nobody. Yeah, Kenehito Yamada, the writer for this manga and anime, was a complete unknown. He had one manga that he did before Frieren, but nobody read the damn thing. Tsukasa Abe, the illustrator, is effectively getting his big break in a big way with how popular Frieren is. In fact, the most notable elements of the anime are the composer and the studio. The composer is a gentleman named Evan Call, who is an American, and worked on Violet Evergarden and Muv-Luv Alternative. The studio working on the animation is Madhouse, which is a studio you could argue might be the greatest in the entire industry. Keep in mind that this is the same studio that did Trigun, Black Lagoon, Technolize, Paranoia Agent, Claymore, and many more. Imagine for a moment that you're a creator, and the very first creation that you have that is getting animated is being done by probably the best in the industry. I'm ridiculously envious of both of the creative minds behind this show, to say the least. I also do have to say that I'm incredibly happy for them, because I honestly believe that Madhouse was the perfect place to animate a show like this. I'll go into more detail on that in a second, though. I want to go ahead and set the stage for what exactly makes this show what it is. And then we'll come back to why I think Madhouse being here and doing this was fantastic, on top of Evan Call's score and what it does for the show as well. Frieren, as I mentioned, is a deceptive show. I maintain this because I admittedly am someone who is deceived by what I thought the show was going to be, and I'm over the moon about how it actually is when it's, in front of me. It's one of those anime that comes along and the description of the show is unable to actually tell you anything about what's inside of it. It reminds me of Neon Genesis Evangelion in that way. If you describe Evangelion in the simplest terms, it's about giant robots fighting angels that want to destroy the Earth. If you describe Frieren in the simplest terms, it's about what happens after an RPG party kills the Demon King. Neither of those descriptions is really accurate about what the show is, or what the show is truly about, narratively speaking, in regards to its themes, and I think that might be part of the reason why I fell in love with it in the first place. If there's any one thing that is true about media in just about any generation, is that you will get a time period where there is a standard set that is a lot lower than what the enthusiasts would like it to be. There are things to watch, for sure, but you as the person who enjoys a specific medium is looking for something that rises above and tries to do things different, whether this be anime, video games, etc. And oddly enough, anime and video games right now are in a creative low point. Oddly enough, though, oftentimes those particular things are something that simply comes along, understands the formula better than anybody else, but tries to do it in a new and exciting way that comes around to broaden the genre. In the world of video games, we actually got something similar very recently with Expedition 33. It's not as if in this day and age you aren't spoiled for choice in regards to role-playing games, but Expedition 33 did everything so much better. And it had such a unique flair to it that it simply became something more. Frieren is effectively this to Japanese fantasy. Frieren follows an elven mage of the same name who is very long-lived. You couldn't tell by looking at her because she just looks like a really short woman that's probably not out of her 20s. She's a mage that continuously travels the world to find new spells, grimoires, and just overall satiate her curiosity and have fun with magic. She's also a bit of a celebrity, given that she was part of a party that killed the eponymous Demon King that you see in so many Japanese fantasy stories. What she is effectively doing at this point in time is traveling the world while dealing with the repercussions of her accomplishments. During her time, she takes on an apprentice that was an orphan adopted by one of the other party members who passes away during the story. Sorry, spoilers, but whatever. It happens in like the first 5 episodes. Another one that joins is another apprentice of one of the other party members that she traveled with. Again, it doesn't sound very complex, but then again, this really isn't an adventure story. There is some combat, and there's definitely some good character drama, but the highlight of it is the emotional beats of the show. What this particular anime wants to do is bathe you in the emotions of a situation. When someone is dealing with tragedy, the show wants you to feel what the character feels. When someone is experiencing loss, the anime wants you to feel that. When someone is experiencing joy, they also want you to feel that as well. The whole goal is to make you and the audience feel as if you are there with these people as they travel. Effectively, we are all in a theater cart following the party as they go through their misadventures. It goes without saying that this is accomplished with very strong character writing. Each character that you follow has a struggle, whether it is dealing with fear, dealing with the desire to live up to your patron's expectations and desires for your future, or dealing with the possibility that you may have missed out on some of the greatest moments of your entire life because you just simply weren't emotionally available for them. If there is a general theme of the show, I can sum it up with the phrase, all you have is the present. When it comes to any living creature, time is our biggest enemy. It is our biggest adversary. We will always struggle against it, and it will always win, because time has all the time in the world. Even a near immortal elf struggles with this, simply because she just doesn't form connections the same way that everyone else does, or as quickly. And yet she finds herself in a position where she's having to realize that by not doing this and forming the connections where she should have, that she's missing out not necessarily on just her own life, but how her life and her long existence could have been positively affected by the people that cared about her so much. On top of that, many of the characters are very memorable. Frieren herself is a bit of a duh, but her protege Fern getting flummoxed constantly and trying to be the sane one of the group is a lot of fun, and Stark having to deal with being neurotic is also enjoyable to deal with. As for Frieren's previous party, Aizen is a stern, reflective warrior, kind of what you would expect from a dwarf, but also kind of monkish in how self-reflective he is. And then Hyder was a fun, drunk priest, but a good man, despite being called corrupt all the time. Then there's Himmel, who someone once showed me a video that argued that he was the greatest hero in all of fiction. Yeah, go fuck yourself. This guy's a bread sandwich. I hate it when he's on screen, honestly. He's generic sword fight man. And he's such a dork, and he's such a fool, that he gave a demon a second chance because it looked like a little girl, even knowing that it fucking ate somebody! Then the demon kid killed again, and it's this guy's fucking fault. This guy is not the greatest hero in all fiction when Superman and Captain America are in the fucking room, alright? However, even with Himmel being a bread sandwich of a character, it doesn't really matter how boring he is. It's more about the effects of him and his actions, and how he admittedly did change the world for the better. So admittedly, I'm of the opinion that how he acted, and how fucking dumb he was, is honestly secondary when you consider the positive effect that the whole of his actions had on everyone around him. The blue-haired boredom factory, if nothing else, was a booster. Good for him. You're just not Captain America. Even with the strong character writing that exists within this, I really don't feel as if the moments could really be properly echoed if we didn't have an orchestral score that properly emphasized the quiet moments and properly emphasized the emotional ones. In this case, Evan Call was the right pick. Though I need to revisit Violet Evergarden at some point because I'm not really satisfied with my review of it from years ago, I do remember one thing I noted was that the orchestral score was excellent, at emphasizing the emotional pain of any single moment. This show is exactly the same. And although I'm going to get some weeaboos who are going to want to crucify me for this, I think that having a Westerner compose this soundtrack was a smarter move. Evan Call doesn't come in with generic Japanese fantasy music here. He comes in with a more Celtic-feeling soundtrack that also has many affectations toward a composer like Howard Shore. It's really clear that he had a much better understanding of the source material than I honestly think anybody else would have, and looking for the emotional weight that it was looking for. The big thing about Frieren is that this is a show that knows when to shut up. During the entirety of the first season, there really was only one time that I really felt that the show was waffling too much. Oddly enough, it was in the middle of a fight where I didn't really give a flying fuck about the inner thoughts of a goddamn demon. Instead, this show will have points where it just stops all the dialogue and simply tells the story through the imagery and the music. This is exactly what is needed whenever it comes to stories like this that are supposed to have heavy emotional weight. I don't need the show to tell me what to feel. And if I had a big criticism of the anime genre as a whole, it would actually be the consistent waffling instead of just allowing the imagery in front of you to tell its own story, and for you and the audience to come to your own conclusions and have your own experience with what's in front of you. I would equate the waffling that I see going on to like if you had someone moaning in your ear about the evils about what's going on that you're seeing during the infamous church scene in the movie Come and See. I don't need a character from the story to tell me how bad what I'm actually seeing is. I just watched a guy throw a baby through a window. The story's being told with the imagery. I don't need it told to me again. Another thing obviously worth mentioning is that this is a show that is incredibly well voice acted in 2 different languages. Obviously the most notable is going to be the voice of Frieren herself, portrayed in Japanese by Atsumi Tanizaki and English by Mallory Rodak. Both voice actors do a tremendous job of really nailing all the lead character as a person. Frieren has a lot of layers to her. When it comes to interacting with other people, she can be a bit distant, but as she gets to know someone, she starts opening up little by little and becoming more affectionate, more complimentary, and also offering wisdom. She's actually a total sweetheart once you really get to know her. Like, seriously, I love this character. She also does silly, embarrassing little things, and she gets very weirded out by the emotional highs and lows of humanity sometimes. These details are not always easy to hit as a voice actor, because you aren't benefited from the ability to emote with your body or your face. Everything has to come through the inflections in your vocal cords. On top of that, both voice actresses nail the lead character when it comes to fighting and dealing with demons, where Frieren becomes so ice cold, it actually kind of reminds me of an assassin. Obviously, I'm going to be a bit more attached to the English voice actor because I don't speak much Japanese right now. But I have to say that this is probably one of the best performances from a female voice actress, or really any voice actress in any anime I've heard, since someone like Revi from Black Lagoon, Major Kusanagi from Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex, or Misato from Evangelion. I think a lot of what helps here is that Mallory Rodak has a massive amount of passion for this particular character, to the point where she actually apparently dresses up as Frieren for her convention appearances, and apparently carries around a plush version of the character too. That's pretty adorable. As for the animation itself, it's Madhouse. I really don't think that I need to say much more beyond that. It's like asking someone who got a steak made by Gordon Ramsay if the steak is good. The steak was made by Gordon Ramsay, dummy. Of course it's good. The big thing that I would say makes the show as good as it is that Madhouse is so experienced at what they do that they know not to get bogged down in details that don't fucking matter. One thing that I know from working with artists in the past is that some artists worry way too much about putting a bunch of details into a bunch of stuff, as opposed to simply putting a bunch of detail into what the eye is going to be drawn to on a page, or in this particular case, in an anime. Madhouse doesn't waste their time worrying about drawing every single leaf on a tree or something along that line. They know what matters most to the scene, and is going to be looking for what looks the best, because there's no point in wasting your energy on a bunch of stuff that one internet commenter is going to get really autistic about. There's one part of the show that I do feel the need to criticize. It's the arc that takes place in regards to the first-class mage trials. This arc almost lost me. What happened was that we were introduced to a bunch of new characters that I admittedly couldn't have given less of a rat's ass about. I was locked in with the party we have, and I admittedly scoffed at the idea of this particular arc taking more than 3 episodes. Now granted, when they started diving into the dungeon, my opinion turned. But even then, a lot of these newer characters at this point of the story that we're at with this anime are kind of weak. I do like the 2 mages that are consistently fighting with one another though, and I do like the old man mage with the monocle. The problem that I have is that it feels like a lot of the other characters that we're introduced to can basically be boiled down to the anime psychopath, and we all know that character, and the anime sociopath. We're all familiar with this archetype, and they're almost always boring because you don't really get the time to flesh them out, or the writer in general just isn't good enough to do so. Now, in this particular case, it's the former, not the latter. The writer here is very talented. Now, this could end up changing as time goes on, and this could end up being an arc that ages like wine if some of these characters get more development and are more important to the story as it goes on. So in the interest of fairness, I'm just more than anything making a note of this here, because it doesn't really affect whether or not I recommend the show. I just considered this a bump in the road worth mentioning. So all in all, I definitely recommend the first season of Frieren. This is one of those shows that I honestly believe that if it can maintain this level of quality, it's probably going to be regarded as one of the greatest anime ever created by the time it's done. Granted, a lot of that is going to be based on whether or not it's able to stick the landing. But this is an incredibly strong start, and I cannot wait to see more. However, this video is not done yet. Oh no. You see, some people actually asked me to respond to a video essay that is now infamous, and to do it from an author's perspective, so let's dive into a supposed moral dilemma.
Violence has been chosen.
So Lextorius's video essay on the moral dilemma in Frieren is one of the most infamous video essays that exists on YouTube, at least over the last few years, right along with In Praise of Shadows' conservative horror video. One thing I'll give Lextorius out of the gate, at very least of the two, his video is the more coherent. Well, coherent to a point where I'm able to kind of understand what he was going for, but he just ends up being wrong, flat out. So the supposed moral dilemma in Frieren is that because demons are portrayed as being able to choose, having some sense of morality, or at least an imitation of it, and seem to be conscious beings, that somehow they can't be dismissed as evil, nor should they be killed outright. There's two problems with this. The first is the part of the story that the guy completely ignores in his video, and seemingly ignored on purpose, and the second is how the guy's argument is complete and total sophistry on so many levels. So, the first part that needs to be discussed is exactly what we see in front of us. Demons in Frieren are nasty, nasty creatures. They are absolutely monstrous in their approach to things because they are adept at deception. Their methods of murder aren't just killing people with various different methods, but rather using human emotions against us to put us in vulnerable positions to where they can achieve their goal of murder. I use the word murder here very specifically because this is a decision that they make on a consistent basis. Like Lextorius wants us to do, I'm going to actually take this on the idea that they are capable of choice. And I don't think you're going to like where this goes, buddy. Now, one thing that I did earlier in this review was reference a mistake that Himmel the hero made, and probably unfairly gave him crap for, but for those of you who were bothered by that, it was a joke. Get over it. I'm just being silly. I'm trying to make you laugh. Because part of this job is being an entertainer. The second reason that it's significant is because it gives us a framework to understand exactly how demons do what they do. Himmel is preyed upon by the little demon girl even after she ate a human being. She uses the kindness of the hero against him to gain mercy to extend her life. As such, we're given the scenario where a demon kills again and then tries to bargain its way out of the death that was coming to it, with the goofiest and most fucking pants-on-head insane logic that only a murderer would think to use. As you can see in front of you, Himmel doesn't make the same mistake twice, as he cuts off the demon girl's arm, saves the little girl, and then everyone's favorite elven wizard torches the little fucker. I'm of the opinion that Lextorius left this completely and totally out of his argument because it invalidates a good chunk of his argument. We get to see that this little demon is given all of the love and luxury of a family that a human being could be given, even when it didn't deserve it. It is exposed to all of the things that we can consider good in this world, and it still made the decision to kill. The decision to murder. So even when exposed to a life of peace, because this needs to be considered, a life of peace, security, and kindness, it still chooses to destroy. It saw the human experience. It lived the human experience, and then it destroyed it. It sets the tone for all interactions with these creatures going forward, and what I find funny is that even the future arc that is in the manga that he goes over reinforces what we already knew. Everything that they do revolves around murder. Even when they try to not murder, they end up murdering just to try to feel something. We see time and time again that these creatures are completely and totally devoted to the idea of murder. They're excited by it, they treat it like a craft, and they are always on the lookout for more ways to do it. With all of this established, there is no moral dilemma. Not to mention, this isn't the only time that the guy cuts out context in his video to try to make an argument. Now, I would argue that the removal of context flat out invalidates the argument right out of the gate. And by all regards, I could probably stop here, but I'm not going to, because I feel like I can bury this a little further, even though he has no grounds to stand on. Let's try to engage on what he was going for. Let's humor him for a second. This is one of the things I see from a lot of video essayists that try to analyze fiction. This is also a reason as to why I despise these guys so much. They assume that because a character in fiction is capable of making decisions, that they cannot be evil. This is one of the most smooth-brained takes I've ever seen, because it does not work in reality at all. This is one of those, this guy has clearly not touched grass type of opinions. Anybody that has ever picked up a history book that has more than a double-digit IQ and has gotten a reality check from their parents at least once in their life will be able to figure out that evil is a decision made by conscious beings over and over and over and over again. Here's the facts. Seeing demons as just animals that kill on instinct, in my opinion, is the least harsh of two ideas. It's the scorpion and the frog. You have effectively allowed the scorpion to sting you if you let these things get close to you. There are creatures in the animal kingdom that actually perform deception to lure in prey and eat them. If it was this simple, then the harshness of the situation goes down a peg. It's just pure survivability. These things are purely and completely and totally incapable of doing the right thing in regards to living among other sentient creatures. The demons are purely and totally incapable of doing the right thing in regards to living among other sentient creatures. And as such, you are left with a situation where it's either them or it's you. If we were dealing with a content creator who had even the slightest inkling of the idea of the importance of choice and the weight of consciousness, he would realize that his arguments that the demons shouldn't be fought against become even more egregious, because what you have done by arguing that they are conscious is that they're fully aware of what they're doing. Even being fully aware, even understanding morality, even understanding the effects of what they do, they still choose to murder. That's worse, you oaf! At that point, we've gone from the scorpion and the frog to just your enemy being Adolf Hitler or Joseph Stalin. They are choosing to do this. They are choosing genocide. They are choosing murder. They are choosing to deceive people to find even more people to murder, which simply compounds the sin because they're fully aware of the fact that they're lying, fully aware of the fact that they're being deceptive, fully aware of what's going to happen if they continue to make the decisions that they make. They know that children will cry. They know that women will be left as widows. They know that children will be left as orphans. And you know what? They're going to kill them too. Does someone who chooses to murder someone else deserve to die? Is that the question that we're fucking asking here, buddy? Because the answers are resounding yes. Another good example of this in fiction is Berserk. Every single apostle that we meet during Guts' journey chose to be what they are. It's what makes them uniquely evil. They chose to sacrifice everyone around them, including those most precious to them, simply to gain more power. They are not justified in their actions, despite what Embrace of Shadows might say, because they're murderers. They are murderers who fully understood exactly what they're doing, and they made the decision anyway. At that point, there is no moral dilemma. If they continue to go down the path that they are choosing, there should be no shock and awe whenever someone comes along and takes their fucking head off. This is something that most people within civilized society understand. The arguments that I watched, admittedly on double speed because the guy's very difficult to listen to. Why does he look like he's my little brother? I don't actually have a little brother, by the way. Because this guy's insufferable to listen to. But if anything, why do they have the opposite effect of what he thought he was saying? The fact of the matter is that arguing that just because someone has some form of conscious thought that they deserve some sort of value is stupid. What determines whether or not they deserve mercy is what they do with their actions. There was never a moral conundrum here. Nobody gives a company fuck about your moral conundrum, you meat-headed shitsack. Actions have consequences. And if the actions of these demons continue to be genocidal, then they're gonna get these hands.
Let's talk this through!
Jesus H. Christ, that whole video essay had, "Why can't we talk to the demons in Doom?" energy. The appropriate response to any and all demons is the following montage. Anyway, I'm Big Micah C. Thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, and have a good day.